Hi, folks. Welcome to Leadership and Innovation Unlocked with Inclusive Collective, where we bring you news and analysis of the latest in people and workplace culture and share stories and learnings of leaders and organizations driving performance innovation through inclusion. I'm your co-host, Nadia Butt, a workplace culture strategist and talent development consultant, and I'm here with my very good dear friend, Rob Hadley, a people and culture strategist specializing in operational excellence, transformations, and analytics. Rob,
Yes.
how
Yes.
are you this week? What's going
I'm great.
on?
I got a camera issue, so I'm trying to look in
Oh,
here and look over
oh,
here.
okay. Yeah,
So if you
there's a
see me
lot
looking,
going
then you're
on,
not gonna see
right?
the top of my head a lot this episode.
It looks great. You know what I wanted to bring in? I wanted to revisit something publicly because I feel like people have been asking us about it. It's our predictions episode.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying they didn't pan out, but I'm also not saying that they not saying that not saying that they didn't. So tell me, you made a couple of predictions regarding the Grammys and the Super Bowl, halftime show, etc. What's going on?
Well, Nadia, that I put a lot of thought in my predictions. Actually, I put about like 10 minutes total into predictions.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like
10
you're like
minutes.
we're going on ready to record and I'm like throwing things down because I wanted to throw like
Yeah,
some
yeah,
pop culture predictions in there. So I
yeah.
think I had predicted that Sabrina Carpenter would win
You
like
did.
Grammy of the Year or Album of the
Yep.
Year or something like that. How could I've seen the Bad Bunny juggernaut coming at
I
me?
mean, right at you,
Like a freight
right?
train, like a Puerto
Mm-hmm.
Rican freight train coming right at me.
I love it.
And then what else did I do? I predicted
Was it the movie?
the Texans would win
Movies,
the
right?
Super Bowl.
You
And
did say the Texans are going to win the
like,
Super Bowl. Here we are with the
and
Seahawks.
and the Seahawks won. I just couldn't, and I couldn't envision a world in which the Patriots and the Seahawks were in the Super Bowl, and this is what we got. So
And this is what
so
we
yeah,
got. I
I'm not
know.
doing
That's what
great
everybody
on the
said.
pop culture predictions. We'll see with the workplace predictions if they
Well,
hold up.
listen, well, that's why we do a podcast on innovation and leadership instead of
Yeah,
pop culture, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
All
so
right. What do
well,
we got going on today?
so today on the show that unlocks innovation, right? That's what we do here, Nadia. We
That's what we
unlock
do.
leadership and innovation. We're speaking with Brandon Sammut and Maggie Roque about how they have led AI transformation at Zapier. We're also going to talk about Nike as they find themselves in the crosshairs of the EEOC. We'll also talk about Eightfold AI and the HR recruiting software lawsuit that they're facing. Later, we're going to check in on my friend Pete Hegseth and his war on the Cub Scouts. And then I believe that you're going to reflect on Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime from a little bit ago at this point.
Yeah.
But first,
At
let's talk about,
first,
what do you got for us, Nadia?
our good old friend Nike.
Yeah.
So, recently Nike was in the news. They're facing a federal investigation by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, right? So the EEOC,
Yeah.
into allegations that its DE&I programs have unlawfully discriminated against white employees and applicants. The EEOC has taken the unusual step of seeking a court order to compel Nike to turn over their records dating back several years on hiring, on layoffs, mentoring, and other race related employment decisions. Nike says it is cooperating and denies violating anti discrimination law. So I'd love first, like, your initial take on this. Like, does this raise any red flags on how DEI policies were being implemented or are being implemented, or do you see this as like a case of federal overreach or
Potentially
all of the
both,
above?
right? Like
Yeah.
it's it's
Right.
so hard, right? We live in a world where it's so hard to tell if the actions of the administration are on the level. Like, are they actually trying to do something here? Are there
Yeah.
actual things that Nike did that they shouldn't have done? But I did
Hmm.
read the charging document, and so according to the EEOC chair Andrew Lucas, they established race-based targets, calling them commitments, which could be taken as a quota, and tied executive compensation to achieving those commitments. They separated people based on race, or that race. They said that race was consideration in layoffs as people were separated.
Hmm.
They provided development and training opportunities for minority groups and not to everyone else. And they hired or promoted people solely based on race, right? So,
Mm.
that's what they laid out. And again, you don't know, right? And I think that Nike can defend themselves against these actions, and
Yeah.
hopefully they created these targets in a legally defensible way.
Hmm.
Certainly when I've done things like this, as a consultant or with a company, We always wanted to make sure that we were we could defend the things that we were doing.
Yeah.
So, but just a reminder, right? So, like, you can avoid things like this by, instead of setting targets or quotas, you have
Yes.
aspirations, right? Like, we want to look like our customers over time. That's
Yep.
totally defensible by something like a company like Nike, so a global consumer brand. And it's reasonable. You can track race and you can track what the demographics look like of your
Right.
organization, but you just
Yep.
don't set hard targets, right?
Totally agree. Yeah.
If you're going to tie diversity to compensation, something that I was never comfortable with. But
Hmm.
remember why it happened, Nadia, right? So for 20 years, companies said we want to do something about diversity. And for 20 years, nothing really happened. And
Right.
so in 2021, 2022, a lot of companies tried to use the stick. And, this is the result of that, right? So you can
Yeah.
tie inclusive leadership, you can tie the behaviors that you want to see in your organization with building the company you want to compensation. It's just sometimes if you're linking the two, hiring and promotion decisions, sometimes that's problematic. You make your
Sure.
development opportunities and your ERGs, you make those open to everyone, right? That's what a lot of companies are doing now.
Yeah.
And then you can't
Yep.
really hire and promote solely based on race. And you don't need to, right? There's
You don't
plenty
need
of
to.
qualified candidates that look
Yeah.
different than the dominant group
Yeah.
in whatever industry or function that you're operating in, right?
Sure. Sure. You said it really great. Thank you for sharing that. And super insightful, and everything you said. Yes. I'll just add too, like these companies that, implement DE&I practices, like you said, in like 2020, 2021, to build, like, the goal was really to build the fairness and inclusion. But when these policies are perceived or, kind of alleged to disadvantage a particular group, that then just erodes trust and raises questions about how we balance equity with merit and fairness, right?
Right.
So I appreciate that. And I think also I'll just add, like, it's the expected behaviors that we want to see, but those should be aligned to the organization's values, right? And
Exactly.
principles, and how those are kind of played out. So I think really great discussion there. I'd love to kind of segue into your news topic on age discrimination.
Yeah, and we have a couple of meaty topics here. Well, well, not
Yeah.
necessarily age, right? So AI hiring platform Eightfold AI was hit with the class action lawsuit in California. And so
Hmm.
that suit alleges that Eightfold violated the Fair Credit Reporting Act because it scrapes information. Probably age is one of the big things that it
Sure.
derives,
Right.
where it scrapes information from internet sources, most notably LinkedIn. It generates a profile and a score for job applicants without letting them know, Nadia. So it doesn't give them the
Hmm.
opportunity to challenge their assessment. So uh, AI tool, you apply AI tool, looks for your social, anything they can find on you, scrapes it, put it together, and puts together the score.
Hmm.
And that's how you're evaluated before you ever have a chance to talk to someone about who you really are as a candidate,
Right.
right? So,
Sure.
and critics say this using the data this way could perpetuate a lot of systemic biases.
Hmm.
This again, follows California's passing in late 2025 of new rules for automated decision systems. So
Hmm.
companies are held accountable for discriminatory outcomes, even if they're not the ones doing it, even if it's a third party like Eightfold AI. Nadia, what do you think about this use of data?
We've just been talking to so many folks that are really leveraging AI in HR practices or talent management practices, and I just keep coming back to, like, AI doesn't create bias out of nowhere, right? It can replicate and even amplify the bias already embedded in its, like, historical data.
Mm-hmm.
I look at some of these huge risks here, like this particular article was mentioning age discrimination, right? So especially if algorithms are trained on patterns,
Mm-hmm.
that almost, like, favor certain career trajectories. Or I'm thinking of, like, I used to add my graduation dates on my resume,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
it's not just about age, right? There's race, there's gender, there's disability, there's the socioeconomic background. I mean, there's even just the name discrimination in general, right? Those can all quietly get coded into the system. And then I just keep coming back to the conversations we've been having in the last few weeks with folks, our some of our guests, that, a reminder that AI is a tool, right? It should support human judgment, not replace it. And the moment we start to treat it as, like, the end all be all decision maker, I think that's when fairness and accountability really start to erode. And so I just keep coming back to it being used as a tool. And the more we kind of add to it, the more it builds. And we really have to be very careful with the bias that's already embedded into the system.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think they're going to lose, Nadia. I think they're going to lose
Mm-hmm.
this lawsuit.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I knew that this is what Eightfold AI did or what some of these
Yeah.
systems
I
did.
didn't.
You
Right.
know, Nadia, I think the real issue is no one should evaluate anything about a person based on their LinkedIn profile, like good or bad,
Right.
right?
There's a lot of fake ones out there
I
too.
know people that could barely tie their shoes, but if you look at their LinkedIn profile, like they look like a
They're
cross
experts
between,
in like, yeah.
yeah, it's like Elon
Oh
Musk and
my
Mother
gosh.
Teresa had a baby, right?
I know. The
But
most,
I think the California
oh
rules
my
are
gosh.
and the class action suit are good for employees and applicants. I think that's the way it's playing out here. So we'll
Sure.
see. I think these are
We'll
both
see.
meaty stories that you're going to have to check in on over the next over the
Couple
rest
of
of this
months.
year. I think it's going to
The
take a while
rest
to
of this year,
resolve both of
for
these as
sure.
well. So,
Yep.
all right. Well, thanks, Nadia. That
Yeah.
is the deets for today. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back with our guests, Brandon Sammut and Maggie Roque of Zapier. Stay with us. Welcome back to Leadership and Innovation Unlocked. We have two for the price of one today. We have two guests. Brandon Sammut is the Chief People and AI Transformation Officer at Zapier, an AI orchestration platform powered by a fully remote team across 40 countries, more than 40 countries, I believe. Brandon specializes in building high-performing teams through talent and technology. His background spans business development, finance, talent acquisition, talent development, education, and venture capital. I think that's everything. You could have just said everything, Brandon. And Maggie Roque is joining us again. Maggie is a people strategy and culture leader with over a decade of experience helping tech companies turn complex, high-stakes people challenges into clear, practical ways of working. Her work sits at the intersection of equity, leadership, and how organizations actually operate. Brandon, it is fantastic to meet you. And Maggie, welcome back. It's great to see you. Thanks you both for joining us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Maggie, so good to see you again. And Brandon, great to have you here. I'm just going to dive right in because I'm so interested in the work that you folks are doing at Zapier. Maggie, so this is your second time on our show. Thank you for coming back. And when we last spoke, we previously talked about, of course, DE&I and rapidly scaling organizations, right? And kind of like, of course, now one of my favorites is now your focus on AI transformation. And so I'm just curious from your perspective, and I know our listeners are eager to hear, is there a natural alignment between having been through that rapidly evolving and challenging time, introducing the world to DE&I or reintroducing or kind of, emphasizing it and now what you see with AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's two things that come to mind to me with natural alignment. The first is that DEI or DIBE, DIBE as we call it at Zapier, and AI transformation both require like strong skills around communication, adaptability, and accountability in terms of not just saying what we want to do, but then following up and doing it. And so I think that there's a lot of skill sets that are the same, even if some of the principles or some of the like the actual learning that we want from folks is different in terms of content. The other thing though that I think is really important is like as we looked about scaling DIBE and making it really practical and real, we gained a lot of really important skill sets that are needed for fast AI transformation and for practical AI transformation. We learned not to just talk about things that we care about, but like to showcase and measure our behaviors around it. We
Mm-hmm.
learned a lot about psychological safety and belonging and how to take risks. And all of that naturally flows into what you need to have a successful AI transformation rollout and growth as a company. And so they really do go hand in hand.
I love that. Brandon, I want to offer that opportunity for you to kind of answer too, just the alignment. Do you see the alignment between DE&I and AI transformation, and what are your thoughts around that?
What's interesting, for as long as Maggie and I have been working together, and it's been 4 years almost at this point, doing talent, culture, and DIBE work at Zapier together, it's always been about maximizing human potential, right? Helping
Mm-hmm.
people and teams, accounting for all the diversity, right? This is, as we heard from Rob, 800 folks in 42 plus countries, right? To turn that fact into a genuine talent advantage or strength for the organization. That's why we do this work. That's why Maggie and I do this work together with the team. Now, when it comes to AI transformation, like in AI as a technology, this is a really important and newer ingredient in what we believe is an opportunity to like maximize human potential and help teams be brilliant together so that Zapier and our customers can be very successful together. And so in that way, it feels very integrated. And like Maggie said, a lot of the things we've been focusing on for years around, culture of psychological safety, culture of, trust in management, making sure that abilities to learn and grow are relevant and available to all at Zapier, right? Those ingredients are just as important as they've ever been. And so it's a little bit of what's old is new again.
That's great.
That's great. I want to stick with equity, and and Maggie, obviously, your specialty is making sure that organizations translate equity into real operating practices. Brandon, you're doing AI transformation at Zapier. Can the two of you? I'll start with Brandon. What are some concrete ways that leaders can build equity and inclusion directly into AI-supported hiring performance talent systems, rather than alternatively waiting until trying to fix things after something has gone wrong or harm has been introduced into the system?
Mhm. Yeah. We, and again, with a lot of credit to Maggie and the team, have taken a systems approach to this. So take hiring, for example. One of the things you might remember from last year at Zapier is that we introduced an AI fluency framework, and we began using that AI fluency framework to evaluate 100% of job candidates for 100% of jobs in the company. So now some degree of AI fluency is a requirement for being hired into Zapier. And we think that's absolutely like the right thing to do. But there too, right? You think about it from a systems perspective, it's like, okay, well, what is that AI fluency bar for, a given role in the organization? What does that really mean? When we look at the rubric for that, what are the different ways that someone can demonstrate that fluency? And practically speaking, are there things that we can just open source or make available to all candidates such that, anyone who, avails themselves of those resources has the opportunity, right, to not just demonstrate that, but even if they feel like there are a couple skills they need to build or things they need to try out, that they have an opportunity to do that. That Zapier has done the work of providing perspective on how you can get to here from there so that you really can, put your best foot forward when you're applying to a job at the company. So that would be one example.
That's great.
Maggie, anything additional on that?
I mean, I think Brandon nailed it. Some other color and examples that I would highlight out there, like where we get tripped up a lot, is that I think, I think one of the knee-jerk reactions that a lot of people in the DEI space tend to have when we talk about AI is like, "Ooh, but there's a ton of bias. Like it's trained on human behavior and human content, therefore it is rife with bias." And I think when it comes to thinking about equity in our programs, that should be an important thing to know and to understand how to counteract. It's not a negator that keeps it out of how we do our work, right? And so I think within that too, I've seen a lot more productivity and like just conscientious creation from like naming it outright and then thinking about like how do we design those systems to check? How do we do bias reviews? And in some ways, it's a little bit easier than with humans, right? Because like you've got all the data set out in front of you. It's a lot easier to check that bias. And so it makes it feel like a more accessible tool to say, like, how are we going to measure for bias? How are we going to measure for the output of equity at the start? It forces us a lot more than how we've traditionally done it in different HR practices in the past. So I don't think that like it's a silver bullet, but I do think if you are being thoughtful and informed as you're building a new system with AI, it actually can create a more equitable and inclusive system than if you didn't at all.
Thank you for saying that. Because I do think there's like reluctancy or hesitation to kind of mix, equitable practices with AI because of the bias perhaps that people have perceived that it exists in AI. And I'm just curious. So, like Brandon, you sit at the intersection of people and AI transformation, and of course, Maggie, your work is really deeply grounded in how organizations actually operate. So, from both of your vantage points, why do you think so many AI initiatives or transformations struggle? or stall when organizations kind of treat them as purely maybe technical rollouts? Like what gets overlooked on that human side?
Mhm.
And Brandon, we can start with you first.
You know what's interesting about AI transformation? It's one type of org transformation. It's like the latest one, right? But it's not the first and it's not the last. And so what you got me thinking about is kind of like, again, what's old is new again. What holds back organizations from having made the most of other transformations that they've undertaken over the last, few decades, whether it was, talent globalization, cloud, if you go further back, the internet, and so on. It's almost never about
Mm,
whether you picked the exact right tool at the exact right time or whether you had like the perfect policy or what have you. If you really look at the difference between the companies that made the most of the moment and the ones that missed it, it's leadership, talent,
mm,
and culture. It's
mhm,
leadership, talent, and culture over and over and over again. And I'm reminded of this because now, spending a meaningful amount of my time talking with, leaders stewarding this type of, transformation at other organizations. And this comes up over again. So I just feel very grounded in this belief. And that's why the DIBE work that we do at Zapier is so important because that is leadership, talent, and culture work at the end of the day. I think why it's so important to have folks like Maggie, leading the work, this AI transformation work as part of our center of excellence here at Zapier. If I can get a little bit more specific, for example, like other org transformations, all of this AI transformation stuff is an org health check. So for
mm,
example, if an organization or even parts of the organization or anything less than super crystal clear about, why are we here? What is our highest and best use of our time? How do we measure excellence? Like, what does that look like? How do we know it when we see it? If that's unclear, even in portions of an organization, then it's really hard to have real impact with, AI, for example, because AI is not the outcome typically. It's just a means. It's a way of possibly producing better outcomes on the things that we already care about. But if we're
right.
unclear about what that is, then we're just kind of dabbling, and any impact that we have ultimately is a happy accident. And then the other thing I would share that we talked about a couple minutes ago is these cultural ingredients for transformation, right? Which are all about people at the end of the day: psychological safety, safety of experimentation, trust in management.
Mm,
Um, how effective are we at giving and getting feedback? Are leaders leading from the front, right?
mm.
It's mattered for everything else, that organizations have tried to do before. It's just as important. Yeah.
You're speaking my language, Brandon. Did you want to add anything to that, Maggie?
I just want to call out and underscore that part that Brandon just spoke to about the cultural elements and name that like what we're measuring more than anything is behavior, right? So,
Mhm.
and I think that's also something that can trip up organizations, whether it's AI transformation or to Brandon's point, any kind of organizational change. We do a lot around sentiment and we still care about sentiment, but like industry wide, we put a lot of eggs in the sentiment basket. In
Mhm.
the DEI space too, I think we've gotten tripped up in the past in like trying to change people's minds or beliefs.
Hmm.
And I think that's admirable, but I also think that that's putting a lot of energy and resources into something that has like a really lukewarm outcome at best. And so I just want to emphasize a lot of what we focus on is behaviors that we want to see and that we can pinpoint and encourage people on, because that kind of takes the belief or the value system out of it. It becomes much more about what we need you to do when you're at work and why, which I think is a much more concrete way for employees to anchor to and for us to stay really unified. It keeps the mission and vision very clear too of like what it all leads to. And so that's something that we've incorporated in terms of how we think about DIBE,
Mhm.
as well as AI transformation when it comes to culture.
Mhm.
And that's another reinforcing thing. If you did a good job at understanding DIBI in your case, then you have a pretty good chance of understanding what will make a successful transformation in AI as well. So, really, really like that. Brandon, since you're here, you're the chief people and AI transformation officer. Should every organization make that person, the chief people officer, the AI transformation leader? Is it just based on your particular skill set and expertise and aptitude, or where should that position sit in the organization?
Here's what I feel really strongly about. The people and talent muscle of the organization must be right at the center of AI transformation.
Mm,
Companies will pick a different leader to be like, on top of the whole thing. It could be the CIO, it could be the chief people officer. I'm less torn up about that particular decision than I am that the leadership talent and culture, expertise and know-how within the organization is like right in the scrum. And that the framework that the organization is using to like invest and shape in transformation accounts for leadership, talent, and culture. I will tell you that, like, practically speaking, as I talk with other organizations, I think we will see plenty of chief people officers called to lead the charge for their organizations, along with, CIOs and others.
Mm-hmm. So I want to go back to one thing because I love talking about behaviors and mindsets and this topic of just cultural transformation, whatever change it might be. A lot of leaders, I think, assume any sort of adoption, maybe even AI, is about tools and training, right? But both of you have really talked about like culture and trust, clarity, leadership, right? Capability. So from your perspective, what does it actually take to build trust or that psychological safety that you had mentioned with employees when you're introducing something like AI into everyday work, especially in moments where I think folks are uncertain or there's fear around even job impact. I know there's a lot of organizations right now. They're like, if you don't adapt AI, you're going to lose your job. So what does it actually take for leaders to build that trust? What are some of the things that you folks kind of promote or leverage yourself? We can start with Maggie.
Sure. I think the three elements that came really quick to mind for me are transparency, accountability, and consistency, which Brandon hears me say the word consistency, I think, every meeting that we're in. But I think that's the key. I think sometimes I'll speak just for myself. Sometimes I feel really pulled to earn trust through building strong relationships and like compassion. So when people come and they say they're concerned, I feel really pulled to be like, no, you don't have to feel that way, and here's why. But what that can do is create lots of tiny different answers that ultimately become inconsistencies and become a little bit of like, who do I trust to say what? And it becomes about individuals at the company instead of the vision and what the company will do on a consistent basis. And so I think to build trust, particularly in risk taking where you might feel like your job's at stake, it's really important to lay out like what we will and won't do, what happens when X, Y, Z occurs, and to be really consistent and transparent in showcasing when that happens and doing the same response every single time. Ultimately, I think that's what leads to trust, even if people don't like the answer, because they start to know what you will and won't do within the program or within a company, as opposed to what Maggie or Brandon might feel or say or do on any given day.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Brandon, did you want to add anything to that? I love those three elements. Anything else
Yeah,
you'd
no, I
add or
mean,
emphasize?
plus one to all of that. I would also say that Maggie has modeled this practically in
Mm,
coaching that she's given to me over the years. And some of the better feedback I can recall from my 4.5 years at Zapier has come from Maggie on this topic of like consistency. We all hear that and we like, well, yeah, of course I care about that, right? But behaviors, right?
mm,
Sometimes we say and do things unintentionally that that conflict with this principle of consistency. And I think a really practical example on what Maggie's talking about are like being consistent. Like, you're talking about vision, Maggie, and where we're trying to inspire folks to be part of change. I do think that is a big ingredient. The vision doesn't have to be certainty. And I think that's a trap in a moment like this, is to convey certainty where it doesn't really exist. To give you a really specific example, the customer support team at Zapier has undergone one of the most significant transitions with automation and AI that we have experienced as a company over the last 2 years.
mm,
And customer support is also a place where, among all the types of work at a company, this is one that experiences a lot of change and sometimes a lot of job loss as we have more kind of opportunity with automation and AI. And naturally, the support team at Zapier asked its leader, Lauren, about this. I mean, naturally, right? Regularly when we started on this transformation journey a couple of years ago. And I just really admire how Lauren and our support leadership showed up within that, being clear about like the why and the why now for new ways of working with automation and AI, what that had to do with the mission of support, which is to help our customers, right, be successful with our product. That's why a lot of people join the support team, like personal affiliation with that. So grounding it in things that we already believe and have affinity with as a team. And then also being really transparent about I don't have an answer today as to how many of these jobs will exist 2 years from now, but I will share with you what that will depend on. And just it's a numbers game, right? Like if we continue growing as a company and customer count and ticket count grows, like here's what that looks like. And, it could be any range of, we'll probably hire more slowly, so fewer new roles in the future. There any company at any given time, a downside case where you will need to trim jobs. That has always been true. That's not new with AI. And just speaking really plainly, as a level of transparency and candor, like people really appreciate, because even though we might want to hear certainty, I don't know that we ultimately expect it. And sometimes if we hear certainty where we know it doesn't really belong, that can actually inhibit trust, because we know that's not really something the leader can deliver.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, I'll go off script and just say that as I hear the both of you talk, I'm like, wow, if every organization had this, this level of commitment and change management infrastructure, and that we'd be in a pretty good place with AI transformation. So seeing both of you and hearing your answers, I'm like, wow, they're great. I wish every organization could have that level of sophistication around this kind of transformation. So, one of the things that, Maggie, I was thinking about, and you had shared with me previously, I'd love if you could share with our audience. I know that you actually use some of the infrastructure that you had for DIBE, right, and the ERGs as part of this transformation, actually able to take advantage of the infrastructure you developed previously. And so can you just kind of share how you thought about that and what that looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. I love bragging on our ERGs, so happy to. What I'll say is, like, we're on probably like V4 of like what our ERG program looks like. And the foundation we started with was at V2. They were organized, they were committed to our DIBE strategy, and they were focused on sense of belonging, social connection, and like professional skill development. And our goal was to like create an internal development pipeline. What we worked on last year was revising that into our V3 of what does that look like if we're not, like, right now there's a gap. We're not embracing our product enough. We're asking all of these teams to lean into AI. ERGs need to do that too. And so we started to build a stronger vision of how ERGs could become that strong pipeline for skill development and growth related to using Zapier, understanding our products, and then also understanding AI and using AI. And so they hosted a bunch of different skill builder sessions, Q&As, demos, products. And by Q3 of last year, we actually had them presenting at conferences about how to use Zapier. And we're now starting to pull that into how do we help them do skilled volunteering with our nonprofit customers. So bringing them closer, but allowing for our employees, our Zapians, to engage in learning about AI and our product and skill development, both in terms of how they're working through that with their teams, but also in places where like it's more of a social connection and learning environment that ultimately still gets them really close to our customers.
Nice. How do I become a Zapian? No, just kidding. I love that. I love that term. Well, I have one final question for both of you as we wrap up here. But first of all, great, like, kudos to the team for successful work and just really supporting the ERG vision for DIBE. So if we fast forward 1 year, maybe two, what's like one bold prediction each of you has about how AI will change people leadership or workplace culture? So we like predictions on this podcast, so that's why I asked that question. But I'll start with you, Brandon.
And we hold you to it. Yeah. We come back and
we'll hold you to it. I'll come back to
you
in a year or two and be like, did that hold true? But do you have a bold prediction just of how AI will change people leadership or workplace culture?
I'll tell you that my hope, I don't know if it's going to happen, but like, my hope is that we don't just use AI to, do work faster and cheaper, but that we use this as an opportunity to rethink how the human pieces of the work gets done in ways that just make for better jobs for people. Full stop. And I really think that's possible. Like, we are seeing examples of this, practically speaking. I think the organizations that make this real, I think you have to start with that as an aspiration. Otherwise, you might miss it. But if you do kind of start with that aspiration in mind, I think that's for the taking.
That's great. Thank you. Maggie, do you want to add to that? One prediction.
Yes. I'm going to do prediction and then like a tiny hope too. But my prediction is that 1-2 years from now, some of the skills we talked about earlier around change readiness and change management are going to become like the skills for people leaders. I think they're already there, but it's going to be all of the other stuff around subject matter expertise, your ability to manage administrative workload, your systems thinking. AI is going to help you do a lot of that, and it's going to help us level up really fast. So where the skills really need to happen is at the crux of what it means to be human and working with other people. The hope that I have is that AI also is a little bit of a level reset, and that we start to see a diverser group of employees joining the workforce, particularly in sectors that maybe it's been more of a barrier. And so my hope too is that the diversity part of DEI gets a little easier to handle as a result of being able to get more AI tools and access into a lot of hands.
I love it.
That's a perfect way.
We're going to have you back on next year so that we can see how those hopes and predictions are. So
yeah,
thank you for that.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to end. So Brandon Sammut and Maggie Roque, thank you so much. Thank you both for joining us on Leadership and Innovation Unlocked. Stay with us, folks. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with our kind of reflections and rants and raves.
Welcome back, folks. We just had such a thoughtful conversation with Maggie and Brandon from Zapier. Rob, what's like still sitting with you from that conversation?
Well, I mean, I guess sitting with me is, I mean, I tried to make a point when I was asking the question there. It came out pretty muddled and snarled as we were talking. But what I was trying to say was I was listening to Brandon and Maggie and thinking, okay, I trust them to guide their organization through this really volatile time. And, but what percentage of people leaders do I trust? And I'm curious is, what you think as well. So if I'm being generous, it's probably like 10 to 20%. Yeah. So I was having the conversation, really into everything they were saying. I was admiring the two of them, but feeling worried about the rest of us, right? Like, so I was like, they're doing great.
Oh my gosh. How do you like replicate Maggie and Brandon?
Yeah, yeah. It's a high wire act to lead people through this transformation.
Sure. And
everyone has to. It's something that no one chose, but everyone has to do it. Yeah. And are people leaders and organizations ready for it? I don't necessarily know. So I think I'm going to apply for a job at Zapier. And I'm sure no one else thought of that. But I will be playing this advice in this interview for other leaders and using a lot of the things that Brandon and Maggie had said.
I truly agree too. I think that they were just both super grounded in how their organizations really operate and embed practices that are connected to their values, right? Like they both are really sitting at this very critical, important intersection of people and AI transformation. And I thought that they just gave such great examples of like what's working well, what challenges do they observe that they can, rapidly fix and then continue to scale. So they just provided some really great insight into how this can be done in a way that's really people-centered. And I appreciated that. And then I just appreciated the two of them just being colleagues and really trusting each other. I think that's what like came out the most was like trust, transparency, communication, which like we talk about at lengths, but how do we actually see it executed in the workplace? And I think they just provided really great examples of that. So
yeah, fun to have a duo, the dynamic duo.
Dynamic duo, yeah. Like had Maggie on before. Really great to meet Brandon, and I hope they come back in a couple of months so we can hear from them.
They should do a show together.
They really should. Maybe we should advocate for that.
Compete against our show,
the Brandon and Maggie show.
All right, Nadia, what do you got for us?
All right, well, next up is rants and raves. So I think you got to go first because you got the rant. We got to end on something positive.
Oh, that's right. So, Nadia, I'm mailing this one in, right? I didn't even look at the actual article because I saw a headline that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has threatened the Cub Scouts funding. So they apparently get a big grant from Department of Defense calling, so So the Secretary of War apparently finds the Cub Scouts too woke. So the organization's efforts to be more inclusive are beyond the pale for, a person that can only be described as gropey, drunk, and somewhat of a warmonger. So, he's threatened to pull the funding of this very civic-minded group of 8-year-old
Sure.
boys in order to score some political points. So that seems wrong in a lot of ways to me, but that's it's the world we live in.
But that's the world
Here
we
we
live in
are.
right now. So here we are. Yeah, that's a shame. Well, I would like to end on a more positive note, and I think because the way our episodes go, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Bad Bunny.
Yeah.
Just in general, like what a moment! Like Grammy wins weeks ago, and then performing the Super Bowl halftime show, and what a performance! Like I just thought the whole thing was powerful. Just reflecting back on it, seeing a global Latin artist centered on one of the biggest stages, is just a representation in action. To me, it was bold. It was joyful, and even a week later, my friends are still reflecting on what that meant for not just the Latin community, but the broader brown community, right? So, like as a South Asian, we know what it feels like to wait for that kind of visibility, to see kind of yourself reflected at those highest levels where people can enjoy you and, kind of just observe like what you represent. And so I thought that was really lovely. And I've just seen a lot of critics over the past like week or two, anyone upset by that visibility. I think it might be worth asking like, what that reflection says about yourself, right? So representation, I think, expands the stage, and it doesn't shrink it. And I just love what that show in general symbolized. So I'm just like still living in my Bad Bunny, era, and enjoying the music all along. So
Yeah.
even the music I don't understand, but I love it because the vibes are great.
100%. So I totally agree with you in the way that you to lay that out, right? As we were watching it, the person next to me said, "Who doesn't want to be part of this?" Right? Like he was just watching it. It was like, so it felt like almost like a cultural line in the sand. It's like, do you want to be part of the fun group and joy, the group of joy, or what's the opposite, right? What's the alternative? And yeah, my son's really digging into the Bad Bunny catalog since the Super Bowl. So we listen to a lot of music that we have to brush up on our Spanish a little bit.
I love it. That's great. Well, folks, Leadership and Innovation Unlocked is a production of Inclusive Collective Media and edited by Ari Mathey. We love to hear from you, so please send us your feedback at inclusivecollectivepodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. If you like what you heard, please be sure to subscribe, follow us, rate us. We love the 5 stars. And of course, wherever you get your podcast today, please share with your friends. Thanks again to Brandon and Maggie of Zapier. We will be back in 2 weeks. Be well.
Thanks, Nadia.